Welcome to the Faith Talks Wood podcast. I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast that talks about everything from Jesus to joinery. And we're really excited about this episode today. You like that, Tom?
I do, man.
I was thinking of that earlier. I was like, I always intro the podcast the same way. I'm like, Jesus to joinery. I'm like,
yeah, I like it, man. I like your creativity today.
But, man, I don't know how it is out in Colorado, but it's been cold here in Pennsylvania. It was 5 degrees for a couple days with a wind chill of like -10. And it's known to get colder here than that. But after living in Tennessee for 6 years, it's kind of it's been a bit chilly.
Yeah, it's been quite cold here. Yesterday, the temperature really wasn't that bad. It was like, 20 something, but we were having like 35, 40 mile an hour winds. Dude, it cut through you like a knife. It was so cold to walk outside. Oh my gosh. But it's worse. I live on the western side of the Rockies, over on the Denver side. Dude, they're like sub-zero. Same thing with the winds, like 20 below wind chill over there. It's
that was the problem we had, is it was down, sub 10 degrees, and we were having 40, 50 mile an hour gust of wind. And our property, the way that my house sits on 5 acres, but it's kind of the way the wood line goes. Anyways, man, it was whipping. I've got trees down. I've got tree tops down. And I tell you what, that is a freaky sound. Wouldn't let dogs out that one of those nights. Wind is whipping, and you open up the door and through the woods, and you can just hear the wind howling through the trees, and the trees are clanging together. And it's like, ooh, that is creepy. Luckily, a lot of our area lost power for a while. Our power went out and back on 5 times, and it was all just a second, just enough to shut everything off, which is annoying. But it went down, come right back up, went down, 5 times. And so we were blessed that we still had heat. My in-laws, they lost power for about half a day. And, when you lose power, when it's that cold, you worry about your pipes freezing and stuff like that. And so we were definitely blessed. It really got me thinking about doing a whole home generator. And it's something that I've thought about in the past, having an automatic switch generator that power goes out, it kicks on, and it's run by propane or something. So that might be something on the list in the next couple of years, but those aren't cheap. That'd be like $8-10 to get a decent one in that'll power the whole house. But there are other things on the list of crucials to do before we get a generator. So, but man, I tell you, I spent all day Saturday. I sent you some pictures. We have a sunroom in the back of the house. It had a hot tub in there. We ripped the hot tub out and took the hot tub, put it by the road. Nobody wants it. Plus, it's like 5 degrees outside. Nobody wants a hot tub, right? But taking that room and remodeling it. So we're going to put new windows in, and we're going to do a whole bunch of stuff. And so I built, it's hard to explain, but I sent you the picture. There's a hot tub, and then in the corner, and I've divided the space where the hot tub was at, and I put a half wall, just like 4 foot high, and not even 4 foot, maybe 3.5 feet. And it's going to divide. My wife's going to have one side where all her glass stuff can be, and where the hot tub was, there's already a ceiling fan, which is nice for exhausting fumes from soldering and stuff. And then on the other side of that little wall will be my office and podcast setup. And so I'm going to put foam along all the walls. I'm going to make a studio basically right there. So pretty excited about that. But my father-in-law came over, we built the half wall, and then he left, and then I ran electrical through all of it and put some new outlets and new receptacles in and stuff like that. And I tell you what's funny, when you do stuff like that, I work behind a desk all day and keep keyboard and stuff. When you use your fingers to strip wire and put wire around receptacles and all that kind of stuff, I woke up Sunday morning and my fingers were sore. Like it was the look. I'm an office worker, and so my fingers were sore. But man, how's your week been? I know you've been real busy, or you're getting busy with work stuff.
Dude, my business is basically, I'm going to call it a summertime business. I've been doing this stuff for 25 years, and I can almost predict it like clockwork. Basically, about the middle of February is kind of when the phone starts ringing. By the 1st of March, wide open, and I stay wide open all the way through end of October. It starts to taper off. By middle of November, it's really slow, and middle of December, I'm doing nothing from typically middle of December kind of to middle of February. But I've had this one job, and I've been waiting on the customer to approve, and I've wanted to get the stuff done and out of the shop, but had to wait on them. And then another customer that I looked at their building 4 or 5 months ago when they first started doing the remodeling, and they called today. And now, so the one customer, I've had the materials in my shop for weeks now, approved it today. Want to know how soon we're going to get them installed. That's 25 signs. And then this other customer that's opening a coffee and ice cream shop. We're going to open next month. How soon can you get the signs? Like, man, what? And then, of course, my daughter's going back to school, and I hate to say that. So I designed this desk, and I've told you about it. I've been talking about it a while. And then I figured out, okay, how am I going to get this down the hall and twist through the door and into the room? And it's just, and the way the window is, it's kind of an awkward space. I wish there was about another 8 to 10 inches there. But trying to design something that's going to fit the space that I can, because her door is in the hallway, so get from the in through the door from that narrow hallway. And I have changed the design, I don't know how many times, trying to figure out how to incorporate everything she wants in it, make it functional, make it fit, make it where I can build it and carry it in there. And finally it clicked yesterday. Like after spending so much time on the computer, I finally figured out. So I got to get that finished. And then all these signs due, and then Workbench Con coming up in 6 weeks. And man, today I was just like, I feel like I'm, when you're floating in water and you're like got your head just above the water and you're barely grasping for air. It's like, that's kind of how I felt today. So, but yeah.
Well, the silver lining there is everybody I've talked to that goes to Workbench Con says it revitalizes you, as like it energizes your drive to want to do better and do more. And so, and plus I know you're going to take a little extra time off to hang out with your mom, which is close to where Workbench Con is at. So hopefully you get this stuff done out of the way, take a week off, Workbench Con, and then hit the road, hit it hard coming back. But
I'm going to tell you, I'm not seeing a lot of sleep or fun in the next 6 weeks, but it is what it is. So, the funny thing about it is like, when you have no work, you sit around and like, oh man, I sure would like some work. We got bills to pay around here. And then when you got a ton of work, you're like, man, I sure would like a little bit less so I could breathe.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome. Well, you've got the Bible breakdown, but before you do that, I just want to say thank you for you guys who are listeners of the podcast. I mean, the podcast is growing, and we're really, really blessed that people are wanting to listen to it. And if you have been blessed by the podcast and you want to support us, there's several ways you could do so. Patreon, you could do it monetarily if you'd like. There's several levels that you can gain over there at patreon.com/Faith Talks Wood. And a perk with that is that we release the podcast Sundays to patrons. And so all the patrons get the podcast a few days early. So it usually comes out Wednesday mornings. It comes out Sunday mornings for patrons. So there's that. Apple Podcast, give us a 5-star, helps people find us, and it just goes a long way. And then just pray for us. We want to see this podcast be used by God, and prayer also goes a very, very long way. So with that being said, Tom, it is your Bible breakdown, and I am excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, man. So God was really, speaking to me this week on his will versus my will. And, the funny thing is most Americans, I'm not going to say most Americans, a lot of Americans, a lot of people will set goals or New Year's resolutions, if you want to call them, that they start on New Year's Day. And 23% quit the first week. 46%, almost half, quit by the end of January. And only 9% statistically actually achieve their goal. So it got me thinking, is like, why is there such a high failure rate at New Year's resolutions? And as I was praying and talking to God and digging around, it's really simple. Most New Year's resolutions are set on our will and based on things of the world, not things of God. And you think about, probably a humongous number of New Year's resolutions, either A, want to lose weight or want to gain weight, muscle or whatever. But for the most part, it's because the world has given us a standard of what we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to feel like. People set monetary goals, and they're one of the pastors I listen to, he's always making this statement that I find kind of humorous. He said, everything's about looking good, feeling good, and having the goods. We're always trying to set goals and do things that to have things and impress people that we don't know or probably don't even like if we did know them. And so I got thinking about that. Well, what would change that? God's will versus our will. Because with God's will, there's a 100% success rate. So I just dove into God's word this week on it and kind of praying about it. So I kind of want to dive into some scripture here. We're going to read 5 short verses tonight. The first one, Proverbs 19:21. And it says, "You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail." And so, how often do we make a plan of our own before we consult with God? And God's purpose, if we would just consult him first, think of all the time we would save, the resources we would save, the headaches we would save, if we just went and talked to him first and said, okay, God, what do you want me to do? What do you have? What's your plan for me? And we skipped right from our plan that's got that 91% failure rate and hopped right onto his plan. It would save us a lot of headaches. And so I just found that verse. I was like, wow, man, that is just pretty powerful. And then if we'd go on over to Ephesians 5:15 through 17, says, "So be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do." So that verse has got a lot to unpack in it. So first part there, don't be fools, but be wise. So that is the one thing, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, that wisdom is the one thing God says he will give us all we want of it. All we got to do is ask. But we have to go ask. And how often do I or other people, we just jump right in and start working on something or start doing something or make a purchase or whatever the case might be without first seeking and getting wisdom. And the wisdom's free and it's there waiting for us abundantly. So let's not be fools. Let's ask God to give us wisdom on whatever it is that we're trying to go after and see what it is. The second part there is make the most of every opportunity. And so, if you've asked God and he's given you the plan and the direction, you have to take action. And we need to make the most of our time. We need to make the most of our resources and actually pursue what it is he tells us to do. That's one thing that we talked about this passage in Joshua when they were going over to the Promised Land. And if any of you missed that episode, that's in Joshua chapter 3. It's one of my favorite passages. But God's sitting here at that point telling them, I'm giving you this land, but now when you come to the brink of water, you've got to step into it. He doesn't separate the water until they step into it. And so God's plan is sometimes going to look big and scary and more than what we can imagine. But when he tells us, we've got to take action and make the most of the opportunity. And 3, it says, the third part there is don't act thoughtlessly. So understand what the Lord has for you. So we need to first, before we're taking just random actions, go to seek him. Say, okay, God, what is it that you want for us? Help me to set these goals. Tell me what the process is. Maybe it's adding a new tool to your shop or going and taking a class and learning a new skill or whatever it is. There's a step of processes to get from point A to point B. And that's where seeking him for wisdom and not just acting thoughtlessly. And because, the one thing about it is like we could choose our path or we could choose his path. And if we go down our path, we're going to have to do a U-turn, come back to then go down the path he has for us. We'll get there, but man, why waste all that time? James 1:5 says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. So that I think that's the biggest key to all of this is first taking that step of asking God and finding out what that path is he wants us on before we start going down it. And then in Psalm 119:105, it says, your word is a lamp to guide my feet and a light for my path. And so obviously asking God, talking to him about it, but then he's given us the guidebook right here. All we got to do is dive into it and read it. And God will speak to you in ways you've never believed about the goals you have while you're reading his word. It has happened to me time and time again, and it's amazing how diving into scripture will shed light on what it is that you're going after. This book is amazing, and the more I read it, the more amazed I am by it. But Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. And that is the one thing, when you hear a word from God, sometimes his plan just doesn't make sense. And if we go back to that passage there I was talking about in Joshua, when they're going to the Promised Land, it doesn't make sense to walk through a flooded river to get to the other side. But with God, it does, And so same thing when he gives us a goal. Sometimes, man, it's just going to seem impossible. It's not going to make sense, but our God is a big God. And if we go on and seek his will, it is amazing what he can do if we'll just seek him and ask. But in Isaiah 55, 8-9, it says, "My thoughts are nothing like your thoughts, says the Lord, and my ways are far beyond anything you could imagine. For just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts." So when you seek him and he gives you that big idea that you feel like is just unachievable, it don't depend on your own understanding. You got to trust in what he has told you, and then you got to take action. That is the other big thing. How many people make a New Year's resolution or a goal and they never even start? Because what they're wanting to achieve just seems unattainable. So they just don't even waste their time. Well, if we want to achieve what God gives us, we got to first trust him, and then we got to take that step. We got to step into the water and boldly and trust that he's going to do his part of what he's set forth. And Will, I'd like to use you and your wife as an example here, if that's all right. And so you are doing exactly kind of what I've been talking about tonight. God laid on your heart first back when you were in Tennessee to bring your wife home. That was a big step of faith to give up that income that she was making. But then look at the reward of what's happening, of her taking that step in faith, giving up that income. She's now number one at home with your children, which is the biggest reward in the world. But she also felt led to start Grace's Glassworks. So had she not taken that step of faith and given up a good paying job, she would not be at home with your kids. She would not have a thriving glass business right now. And then you had laid on your heart pursuing Willie's Wood Finish. And you have not just thought about it. You've spent the time practicing, learning, perfecting the finish, getting it to where it's going, sending it out to people to test. You've built a website, got labels made, done the marketing, all that. And so God laid on your heart something to pursue that required taking some huge steps of faith. It takes time to do all that. It takes money to buy the labels, to buy the jars, to do all the formulating before you ever get to make a dollar. And it might seem like this huge task to create something to go compete with Rubio Monocoat and Walrus Oil and all these other finishes are out there. But our God is a big God. And I believe there's going to come a day when that finish you've made, people are going to talk about it just like they talk about those others. And so I want to commend you and your wife, because that was some big steps y'all took, but now you're reaping the reward. And I think down the road, you're going to reap some really, really big rewards for taking that step of faith. But yeah, man. So before you throw in there your opinion, well, I just want to encourage everybody to talk to God first, ask him what that plan is that he has for you before you just thoughtlessly go pursue your own plan. And you're going to have 100% success rate if you listen, and then if you take the steps boldly that God tells you to take. So, Will, what are your thoughts on all this?
Man, that's good stuff. And thank you. You know, there's a lot of stress that's coming with this whole business venture. And, but before I talk about that, my translation of James 1:5, I just wanted to read it because it has a little bit different wording and it really kind of emphasizes a little differently. So I'm reading out of the New English Translation. It's kind of been my new translation I've been going to. Really like it, but I have like 5 or 6 different translations, so I kind of jump around a lot. But this one says, "But if anyone is deficient in wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and without reprimand, and it will be given to them." And it will be given to them. He gives generously. And that's the one thing, the only thing in scripture that God says, if you ask, he'll give it to you and give it to you generously. And I've learned that as a core life principle over the last like 6 years or so. When we moved to Tennessee, our uh, our church that we started going to, the pastor there, several times I heard him talk about wisdom and how, God is, that's the only thing God has promised to give us and give us abundantly. And so, um, yeah, and it's hard for us as believers sometimes to trust in that, because a lot of times we don't see things right away, and it's not tangible right away that we can grab a hold of and that we can appreciate. And so, yeah, man, the Willie's wood finishes thing, it's kind of scary. I'm not going to lie to you. Because there's a bit of vulnerability that's happening, right? Because it's got my name on the jar, and some people don't know this. So my name is Will, but growing up, my whole family, my side of the family, calls me Willie. I've been called that since I was a kid, and to this day, I'm 32 years old and I'm still called that. And so I'm putting my own name out there, literally. And I wasn't sure how to react to it when I first started developing it a couple of years ago. And I thought, oh, this works pretty good. And I hit a brick wall where I created it. It really wasn't what I wanted, but it worked okay. And so I used up the finish that I had and that I had made. And then I got this spark, and it was like this, almost like a nudge from God. It's like, hey, you need to dig that back down that road. You're onto something, but you need to keep going with it. And so that's kind of what we've done. And yeah, so man, it's scary. We're close to a launch of a website. I'm not going to talk too much about it, but I've got some pretty big things in the works that basically I need to jump off this podcast and go start making finish. There's a lot of blessings I'm seeing God as we've been obedient in following this. I'm already starting to see the benefit of, hey, you better be ready for this. And one of the things what we're doing is, and it's funny, I don't have much of a design sense, and so I had made up this cheesy label with just black and white and borders, and on the edge of the label I'd put Romans 5:8. For while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And Tom, you helped me with that, and you redesigned it and got me, a logo, and just really, I'm more than blessed, man, that all the stuff that you've done. But you took that Romans 5:8 and you put it right on the front. And when I first saw it, I was like, all right, we're gonna stand bold in this. And I was talking to a buddy of mine about it, who's also a believer. And I told him, I said, Romans 5:8 is gonna be right on the front of the label. We're not going to be ashamed of it, and it's going to be in my website. I'm going to talk about it. And I don't know. It's one of those things. Like, I feel God just continuing to push this way. So that I'm not going to talk too much more about the Willie's wood finish stuff, but yeah, it is crazy. But to your point, New Year's resolutions are something that is, I think, a cultural phenomenon. I think it's a societal thing. It's not anything that's ever been tangible. It's always been something that everybody does a New Year's resolution, and so it's become marketable by companies and by advertising agencies and stuff. And so we see this and we jump on it, and we're sold stuff and all this different weight loss. Well, New Year's resolution, here's this new drink mix that you can make up and you can blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. And so, the thing with New Year's resolutions, I never make any that I know I won't keep. And that sounds stupid, but like, I'm not going to say, I plan to save $100,000 this year. Well, I can't save $100,000, right? It's just not possible with my salary. But I said, I want to lose 25 pounds. And I can do that. I know I can do that. And so I set that goal. And then, one of the other things is I'm going to stop drinking any sugar drinks, pop and all that kind of stuff. Right. And I do that because I know I can, because the problem is if we set these goals that are just far reached, right? I think it makes it to where you keep, whenever you slip backwards, you feel so much further away from it that you finally just and just give up on it. And so, and there's nothing wrong with New Year's resolutions. Don't get us wrong there, but I think we need to be real with ourselves in that. And the other thing too, as Christians, if we take a New Year's resolution and we focus it around God and around our faith, He's going to bless that. And therefore, it's going to be easier. So I'll use myself as an example. I'm 32 years old. January 1st, I weighed 250 pounds. I've got a 3.5-year-old and a 10-month-old. And I can't run around because I get exhausted too fast. And I don't want to be that dad. And I don't want to go down a path that, maybe lead to a cardiac arrest or something crazy, right? Because I'm not taking care of myself. And so my prayer to God is that God help me overcome the indulgence and the just the uncontrollable eating and all the stuff, right, that has produced the weight gain in me over the last several years, so that I can get in shape and live to see my kids grow up and be, an active parent. And so, that's my prayer. And so I feel that, and I don't feel, I know that God is going to bless that because I continually ask for that. And so, I think that's a difference between a lot of people, is that like, and their motives are wrong. Like, I want to lose weight so I look good in a bikini. Why? Right? Or I want to have a 6-pack of abs, right? Because I want to impress the girls or whatever it may be, or I want to, have this status and I want to look this way and I want to do. And so we put these goals around these, what we would consider tangibles, but they're all worldly. And so what happens is when we fall short and we realize we can't, we get depressed. We have anxiety because we're not going to make that deadline and all this stuff, right? And so, Christian, if you're listening to this, all I say is that anything that you do, any goals that you set them around the Lord, and He will bless them because you are in His will. And every day when you wake up, the first thing you should do is ask the Lord for wisdom for the day, right? God, give me wisdom to live out the purpose that you've called me to live, right? And so, anywho, that's my thoughts on all of that. But I love the topic and the idea and the, we really need to focus on God and Him giving us wisdom, because otherwise, if you read the book of Ecclesiastes, right, Solomon had everything you can imagine. He had it all. And what's he say? It's all in the wind. It was all for nothing, right? and we forget that kind of stuff. Like, ask anybody who's out there who billionaire and that had, and they're like a Warren Buffett or these guys that have been around a long time. Most of them are like, man, I'm just going to give all my money away. I've found that I've earned all the success that you can earn in the world, but it still hasn't brought happiness. And so, because our joy comes from the Lord, and if we're not focused on Him, what are we doing, right? And so, anywho, that's my thoughts on that stuff. Good topic. I love the heart in that, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I tell you, Colossians 3:17 says, and whatever you do in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through Him. And that's what it's all about. It really is. Well, brother, we had a question come in. I'll let you read that question from Hugh. And ironically, this came in after I had planned the topic, but it really kind of ties into what we're talking about today there.
Yeah. So we had a question come in our email from Hugh. And so Hugh asked, I'll kind of abbreviate it a little bit. He said, have you ever stepped out in faith for a bigger tool purchase? And so he kind of goes to explain, he's like to buy an expensive tool to use to make products and then pay for itself. Or do you make the money through your business first, then justify taking money from sales to then go buy the thing? He said the reason why he asked is that he really wants to buy a CNC or a laser. And he said, whether or not I should do that is all something that I'm praying about. Haha. He says that my business is only that on paper. I'm not really selling much yet, but I'm making steps towards doing so. And he said, so I could buy a machine right now by taking money from my personal savings, and then in hope that I can sell enough from then to make up for it. Or I could start building a bunch of other stuff to eventually work my way up to having that. And he says, we just had our fourth baby. Money is not exactly flowing right now. So I see all this as a possible way to pay off some hospital bills. And then he says, and I love this about Hugh. Thank you, Hugh. In typing this, I think I found my answer. But if you guys get a chance to chat about it, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So I'll give my thoughts because I think Tom has a little more insight on this. But my initial thoughts are, man, it's all depends on your financial freedom, right? Your financial position, because it's one thing to buy. For instance, I bought a laser. My first laser was a X-Tool D1 5-watt laser. I got it on a Black Friday deal, and I think I paid $300 shipped for it. I could afford $300, right? I couldn't afford $3,000, but I could afford $300. And that laser paid itself off in a couple of weeks when I figured out how to use it and started making stuff. Paid itself off no time. Like that $300 was back in the account and triple fold. That's a smaller purchase. Now, if you're talking like CNC and you're talking like a $2,000, $3,000 Onefinity or something like that, that could be different. But it all depends on everybody's position. And so the wise thing to do would be just to save up for it. But then some would say, if you've been saving and you have the ability without putting your family in jeopardy, in financial, in the financial aspect, then buy it. Right. And so that's the kind of the two camps about it. But, and I've done both. I've saved up for stuff, and then I've built projects and taken the profits of that to buy tools. But I've never bought a big tool. The most expensive thing I've ever bought is my SawStop, which I got for less than $1,000. And that was a no-brainer because that saw used is still a $3,000 saw. So, it's all relative, I think. But Tom, I think you have some more insights because you've done some of this, and I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on that.
So I'm 53 years old. I started my first business back, I was about 26, 27 years old after I got out of the Air Force. And I have made some very smart decisions in my life, and I have made some really dumb decisions in my life. And looking back on it, I'm still here and alive today, but the one thing that I did stupid, and because there's a verse in the Bible and it says, "Purify your hearts," and it's from your evil ways, and it says your loyalty is divided between God and the world, and the world will tell you to use other people's money to make money. In other words, to borrow money to buy real estate, borrow money to run a business. Don't take money out your own pocket, to go borrow it from the bank and go in debt. So I will tell you, there is not a single verse in the Bible that supports that. In fact, it says, "Owe no man anything but your love." And so I have borrowed so much money that I was stressed how I was going to pay the bills the next month. And so I had 12 employees at one time. I had a pretty decent sized business in North Carolina. We did signs, screen printing, embroidery, engraving. I had a big 14 color automatic screen print press, dryer. And I mean, we printed 1,000 shirts an hour. So we were pumping out some volume. I had another 10 color automatic that ran about 600 shirts an hour. I had a laser engraver. And when I say laser engraver, I had not one of these cheap Chinese models. I had a universal laser that cost $50,000 that would run like a scalded dog. Final plotter, digital printer, embroidery machines, and I had payments on all of them. As one thing grew, I purchased something else. Well, that was all fine, well, and good until the day that a new president came in, and I'm not going to bring political stuff in it, but the economy collapsed, and I went from a thriving business to everybody being scared and holding on to their money, that then my business wasn't flowing like it was. I still had all those payments. And it was I learned a hard lesson that time. We got through it, but man, you're talking about some stress, put stress on my marriage, stress on my whole family. Your kids will feel the stress that you're under. I promise you, even though they might not understand what financial problems you're going through, they'll be able to identify the stress that's in your life. And so now I'm on the opposite end of the boat. So I would first tell anybody, go through Financial Peace University at your church. If your church don't have it, tell them to start teaching it. Best thing I ever did. So now I do not have all those equipment payments. I don't have all that financial stress. And when I buy a new piece of equipment, I write a check for it. I pay cash. Might use my debit card, but you know what I mean. It's paid for the second I get it. I don't have to worry about how much income comes in next month to pay for equipment payments. And so, but when you're first starting a business, and based on what this email is, I'm assuming that this is a hobby. You have some other type of income because you said you're not really making money. So I'm assuming you have a job because somehow you're feeding them 4 kids and your wife, keeping the house and lights on and everything. So assuming that this is a side hustle, when you're starting a business, the money comes from somewhere, and that's your personal savings. When it is your personal savings, the first thing you need to do is talk to God about it, which is what we were just talking about, and ask Him. I think He's going to give you a clear direction on what you're supposed to be doing. And whenever there's a verse that says when you consult Him, He will give you the peace that surpasses all understanding. So when you talk to God and He gives you an answer, or you feel like He's giving you an answer, but you still don't have peace, because I'm going to tell you, Satan is the ultimate deceiver. He's going to also put thoughts in your head, but his thoughts will not give you peace. And so if you're listening to God, a peace will come over you about that decision. And then when God leads you in something, it's your personal finances, you need to go talk to your wife about it. So when we sold everything and moved out here to Colorado, we had our home we had lived in it 17 years, and we had refinanced it at one point down to a 15 years. So we had actually built up a lot of equity in it and in our rental house. And we sold both of them kind of at the peak of the market there. Of course, we bought at the peak of the market here, but we bought a ugly, dumpy 1909 farmhouse and building a shop. But before we ever moved out here, I told my wife, I said, I want to have a shop that I have plenty of room to work, and I would like to spend X amount of dollars and purchase a nice table saw, dust collection, and a bandsaw. And my wife gave me her permission and her grace and her blessing to do so. So that money for my table saw, bandsaw, and dust collection all came out of our personal savings that we had. And so that was the first tools in my shop here. And then we got here, I got my new business going, and everything else. Now, I brought with me, I already had in North Carolina, drills, impact drivers. I had bought my Festool track saw and that back there, the dust collector. So I had that I brought with me. But I didn't have any big shop tools. I had a little portable table saw, and I sold that when I got my new. But everything else now, my business is paid for. So I do jobs, and I just keep saving. And then when the time comes, I kind of have a goal list of what I want to put in my shop. And I prayed about it and kind of prioritized what is the most benefit, what's going to be a moneymaker versus what's a want. And I'll give you an example. I would like to buy a Lie-Nielsen low-angle jack plane. I don't know how to use hand tools, all right? So it is a personal want, something I would like to learn to do, but it's not going to produce me any money. So, and you might think, well, that's a couple $100. I think they're like $250. They're pretty, which is a lot of money, but it would not be a wise purchase for me right now. But I'm going to tell you, before I retire, or die, I think I eventually will have one. But that's a luxury item. It's not going to make me any money. But that's kind of how I go about it. And so I save and I pay cash for it, so there's no financial stress. The one thing I will say is, if you go through Financial Peace University, they teach you to have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And so for me personally, I like to lean more toward the 6 month. And depending upon it might take you a while to get there, but we kind of keep a nest egg so that way, because the one thing about being self-employed versus, in your case, Will, you have a set salary from your bank that you work for. When you're self-employed, you don't get the same paycheck every month. And I have good months, I have bad months. Summer is great, winter is awful. So you have to really plan for all that stuff. And my family has to be the first priority over buying a tool. So But you said you had the money in the email, but then it also made it sound like that, money wasn't flowing in, and that might kind of cause some financial stress. So my advice is pray about it. Go talk to your wife about it. The two of you look at your finances. Is it going to cause a financial impact on you personally? If it's not, and your wife says, yeah, I believe in you, I think this is a good idea, you feel like God said that, go buy it, regardless of what the cost is. If it's a $5,000 CNC, but God says do it, your wife says do it, and it's on your heart, purchase it. But if you don't have the peace from God, I wouldn't even go waste your time talking to your wife, But if you have the peace from God, go talk to her. And then if she has that same peace, then take action. But if she doesn't, if it causes her to feel uncomfortable, don't do it. And then the third piece of advice is, what tools do you have? What can you go out in your shop with and make money with right now? Maybe it's, all right, I'm going to try to sell 10 cutting boards and make enough to buy whatever this tool is. But I think if you can go out there and make some money off of it, that would be the wiser decision, in my opinion. And I could tell you how I got my tools. So when we were remodeling how I got my Festool track saw and dust collector is we were remodeling the rental house, and we went and looked at price of cabinets. They were like $5,600 or something. And that was me doing the install. That was just buying the cabinets from the thing. And I told my wife, I said, look, I designed them up. I got my material list. I said, I can do this. I have helped Boyd, the guy that had taught me woodwork and do cabinets. Let me buy this tool. And it was like, the track saw and the dust collector. I don't remember what the total was, but like $3,000 less than getting the cabinets. I said, and let me build these. I said, and then after I did those, my wife was like, wow, she was just blown away with how the kitchen came out, how the bathrooms and the laundry room. I ended up using that to do 2 bathrooms, the kitchen, and the laundry room all at that house. That built faith in my wife that if I spent money on a tool, that I could either A, save us money, or B, make money, because I have done jobs, obviously, that I've made money with it. And so when we moved out here, it was what I had done at that house that then when I went to her and said, okay, I want to buy a table saw that's over $2,000. I want to buy a $2,000 dust processor and whatever. But it was like $7,000-8,000. I don't remember the total amount, but between table saw, dust processor, and the bandsaw that I was asking her to let me spend. And but she was like, okay, you're going to be doing all this stuff in our new house. Do it. And so, little things like that. So if your wife isn't on board, have you shown her actions in your shop that would make her believe in what your dream is? Or is it all talk, So go out there and make her something. And
yeah. I've got a couple more things as you were talking. Hugh, you said a CNC or a laser. 2 things I want to bring to mind. So I'm being the devil's advocate just because it's part of my nature. And, in a business world, if you've never used either one, I will say right off the bat, a laser is easier to use because it's one-dimensional. You start getting into CNC, unless I don't know what your day job is. I don't know, like maybe CNC would be fine, but there's a pretty big learning curve because it's not only are you moving a gantry around, but you've got to set the right depth. You've got to set the right feed and speed, and you've got to understand. I mean, there's a lot of things with the CNC. I'm not saying that to discourage you. I'm just saying if you don't feel confident in your ability to understand new technologies, the CNC may not be the first thing I would go to. Laser, if you get a powerful enough laser, I mean, you can cut up to like 1/2 inch thick material with the right laser, and you can do a lot of a similar kind of stuff. So just something to think about. And in your email, you did say that, you could pull the money out of savings and buy it, and 4 kids and stuff like that. And so, like, to Tom's point, talk to your wife, pray about it, see if this is something that you feel can make money, and it's something that God is leading you towards, because that's the ultimate thing, is making sure that you're in line with God. And like to Tom's point, don't go in debt, don't go putting on a credit card, don't whatever you do with cash, and make sure that it's something that that you're comfortable with, and that you can and Dave Ramsey, one of the things he says with certain purchases is, do you feel comfortable that if you bought that and then it caught on fire and you lost it, are you okay with that? Right. He says that, I think, with cars, like, if you buy a Ferrari, are you okay? Like, financially, you're going to be okay if it just burns up, because, you have to get yourself mentally ready for that. And so that's kind of a similar thing. Like, if you have the money and you're able to make that purchase, and your wife's behind it, and you feel God is, nudging you towards this, then, man, go do it. Like I said, I haven't had any of the big purchases yet. We're going to talk about a little bit here about kind of goals, right, Tom? I know you kind of talked about beforehand, kind of where we're going and what goals that we want to set for shop to aspire towards, right?
I kind of want to roll off of this, and what is it? How are we using wisdom? We talked about seeking God for wisdom. So what are the goals for the shop? How are we using wisdom and seeking wisdom for the future of our shop? And I kind of have a little process that I go through, and I thought we'd just kind of share that based off of his question. And I think it might help some people. You want to roll first, or you like me to?
Yeah. So when it comes to shop, and we've talked about this in the past, like, I'm not like, well, I want this tool or that tool in this circumstance, right? If I need it to do a project, and it's like, oh, the bandsaw I want a bandsaw, and I've already used it several times, and I almost like it more than my table saw. I don't, but it's up there. Just that ability to cut stuff. Anyways, for me, I aspire to build a shop. I've been using our garage over the last several years. I'd love to be able to park in the garage. We live in snow country, and be able to, walk out into my garage and turn the key and leave, and not have to brush snow, that kind of stuff. So I aspire to build a shop, and only going to do it with cash, and only going to do it if we can do it the right way. Like, I'm not going to just put up a pole barn. Like, I want to put up a nice big shop. I want to be able to put my tractor in there. I want to be able to park equipment in there. I want to be able to have a shop in there. I want to be able to run my business out of there. So, like, I'm talking a big building, right? And so my kind of goal or aspiration in that sense is to get to a point where we can justify building a building. And it's going to take a couple of years. Although honestly, I'm feeling God kind of say, hey, get yourself ready for sooner with the Willys wood finishes, because I don't know. I just have this weird feeling about it. I told my wife last night, I said, I feel like I need to just start making finish as much as I can until my ears bleed. You know what I mean? Because I feel like there's going to be a overwhelming, God's going to bless it. I feel, again, that's how I'm interpreting what God is telling me to do here. And so the shot may come sooner, because honestly, there's only so much room I have to be able to produce finish. Right. And to do it at the scale in which I feel it's going to get to, I can't do it in my garage. It's just not going to be feasible. And so, that kind of goes into the thought like, oh man, maybe this is going to be something. And anyways, so yeah, and then with, the kind of tool purchase thing, I've learned that I love the laser engraver and cutting specifically. And I have a 10 watt. It's not the most powerful. I would love to get 100 watt, 140, like a big boy, to be able to really do some stuff. But I'm also not going to spend the money on it right now. And then on the other side too, is I would love to get dust collection under control and get me a G700, which aren't too expensive, but they're enough that it's not a purchase that I can just go out and make, because I'm the worst at dust collection, and I'm realizing more and more that I need to get better at it. And so that kind of stuff is like, yeah, that's in the back of my mind is, on the woodworking side is, man, I want to get a nice dust collector. And so it's funny. Bruce, from We Built the Thing, put out a new YouTube video today about his Oneida Super Max or something like that. And he got that by meeting Oneida at IWF. And so I'm thinking like, oh man, maybe a dust collector will come. I'd love to have the G700, but that might not be in the play. But anyways, all that to be said, seeking the Lord's wisdom in all of this is something that I'm learning more and more as I get older, because I've made bad decisions too. And to just go out and buy something when I should have prayed about it more. It should have just stopped and said, okay. And I've found, you're going to find this funny outside of shop in my normal life. I've found that I've become more patient with purchases. I've been in the Word more. I've been trying to, stay closer to Him more and more. And so like, yeah, I mean, I used to be the guy. Again, I'm a tech guy. This stuff I do for a living, but I used to buy a new phone every year. Like I get the newest, best thing because I wanted to be up in the. And now I've got a 2-year-old phone. I haven't bought a new one, and it's fine, right? But man, a year ago, Will would not be thinking that. And so, it's just, that's kind of where I'm at in life, having to get more wise. And a big part of that too, and I'll be 100% transparent, is that when we went from 2 to 1 income, I had to start really thinking about stuff like that. Cause it was nothing a year ago, in a sense, to spend $1,000 on something because we had it, because we made a lot more money. Right. And so that's the difference now. It's like, to Hugh, to your point, man, I've got 2 kids and now my wife stays home with the kids. And so, yeah, the money's not flowing like it used to. Right. And so I have to be more wise with the purchases and the things. And like, I just bought a bandsaw and a drill press off of Facebook Marketplace. I paid $180 for the pair. Right. I can justify that. But like, what do I really want in a bandsaw? I'd love the Alpha series from Harvey. I'd love one of those. Drill press, same thing. One of their, oh man, with the digital readout. And I'd love that. But right now, this will do me good. It's square. It drills a hole straight down. I'll spend $140 in the next couple months on a nice table from Rockler, and I'll be fine. Right. So, anywho, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that. What are your thoughts on that, Tom?
So, like for me, ironically, I want a laser for the shop, but I've had a laser. I know what I can do with a laser, so it's a justified purchase. But right now, at the moment, God's telling me to hold off and wait. I've got college tuition I have to pay for next month for my daughter, and got car insurance to pay next month. I pay my car insurance once a year for the whole year, and that way I don't have to deal with it. So, it's even though I had the money in the bank to pay for the laser, and I just found a good deal on a used one, and I was wanting to go and get it because it was a pretty good deal. And God was like, not now, you got to hold off. And but there's other things to go into. Obviously, we were talking about money and saving for it and having the cash. But the other thing, when you're wanting to do something new, what can you be doing now, education-wise, to prepare you for when you do get that tool? Because if you're talking laser or CNC and you've never done either one, you could be learning. Do you already know how to do artwork and create vectored graphics? That is a huge part of it. If you can't create the artwork to take into a CNC, and when we say CNC, people like to call CNC routers CNCs, and they like to call lasers, but they're both CNCs. They're both computer numerically controlled. I have a vinyl plotter. It is a computer numerical, means it's got an XY axis or a X, Y, and Z axis, and it all moves off numbers. One uses a router, one uses a laser, one uses a knife blade. But you have to know how to prepare vectored graphics in order to use any of those machines. Yes, you can download vector graphics, but you're going to be a much more versatile person if you know how to create and manipulate your own vector graphics. So that's something that if you're like, okay, I know I want to do this, do you already know how to use Illustrator or CorelDRAW, or there are other programs on the market that you can learn that, and you could be learning that now, and that, I shouldn't say it didn't cost you anything. If you don't have the program, you got to buy a program, but the education is free. There's tons of free videos on YouTube and classes that you could take knowledge-wise. For example, I would like to learn how to turn. I don't own a lathe, and I'm not going to buy a lathe until I go to Rockler or Woodcraft or a place like that offers classes, and I take a class, learn how, make sure I really like it, understand all the accessories, because that's the one thing, not so much with a laser, because a laser, you basically buy it and it's ready to use. You don't have to buy anything. With a router, you got to buy bits. And if you break a bit, you got to buy another bit. And you got to have a ton of different bits. I hate to say it. That's why I laugh at people when like to say they're building a regular router table and they buy the cheapest router they can get, the cheapest router table, and think they're saving all this money. Router bits are the expensive part. Dude, like my router table that I got from, I bought it from Harvey. It was like, $300 or something, $350, $400, something like that. Man, you can spend $200 on one bit. I mean, router bits are expensive, especially if you get good quality ones that last. So also that's the other thing, is gaining the knowledge of all the accessories, everything else that goes with what you're trying to get into. Because if you go buy a lathe, if I were to buy a lathe, it does me absolutely no good if I don't have some lathe tools. you know, and have you looked at those? They ain't cheap. Oh my goodness. So same thing. Look at all the other things that goes with, if you're getting into that CNC or that laser or whatever the tool is. And then the other thing is going out in your shop. The one thing I will say, and I'm guilty of this, of not making the most of every single tool I have before I go purchase something new. Because you ever watch some of these guys, and Dusty Lumber Company is a good example. I know you watch him as well. That guy, like, he knows how to make the most of every single tool he's got. Like, they are so creative. There's so many little tricks and hacks and things you can do with literally about every tool you can name. But that would be the next thing. It's like really honing in on that. And then the other thing is, I know you like, you say you're a cheapskate, Will, and you like to buy inexpensive. I'm the exact opposite. I shouldn't say it's that I don't like. I look for used stuff, and if I find a good deal, I'm all about getting that good deal. But I'm more like you go to the car lot and you see the base model pickup truck that, in the old days had to roll up windows, had no stereo, nothing, no heat and air. And then you saw the 4-wheel drive with the stereo, the power windows and all. I'm always the guy that likes to look at the Big Daddy, and like I would love to have a big 5x10 CNC, or I'd love to have that big old huge Thunder Laser or the big Laguna, either one of them. But is there something you could do as a stepping stone? So you talked about you had gotten the small 5-watt laser, maybe making a small step and purchasing a smaller tool to learn the trade, to practice, make sure you really like it, make sure that you can make money in that before you just dive all in and get the Mac Daddy of all tools, so that's kind of
I will say
my process.
Another thing too, and just kind of go back to Hugh's question, and people don't take this into account as much, but the market you're in. So when we were living in Nashville, that's when I bought my laser and I made all the money with it, because the market there, people are willing to spend money on stuff. I mean, it's just what it is. And there's more money in Nashville. And so, that's the other thing too, is, to your point, Tom, Hugh, if you want a laser, go. I highly recommend Xtool. I love my Xtool. They're high quality. Go buy an Xtool for $400, $500, $600. See if you like it. See if it's something that you can make money with. Because trust me, I made like $2,500 in the matter of a month and a half with my Xtool 5-watt, just engraving stuff and selling it to people. So you can do it. And then if you get to a point where, you want to get bigger and you've made the money then you buy the bigger one, right? So that you have that tiered system that you can do. But, you said about, I'm more of kind of the cheapskate, and I am. And my mentality on tools to a degree is I'm not going to pay more for something if I can get the same job done out of something else. Does that make sense? Like, and I'll perfect example, because I know you really like this company, and I don't, just because the prices are outrageous, are woodpeckers. Like I have a square in my shop that's just as accurate as a woodpecker square. I paid $30 for, right? And I can't justify paying $100 for a square or a rule, and when I know I can go and get one that's half the price and does just as well. Now, not everybody has that mentality, but that's how I am. And so again, it's not a negative on somebody that likes woodpeckers, because, if that's what you like and you are loyal to that brand, that's fine. I'm not loyal to any brand. I don't care. Right. And that's the thing too. It's all about the skill of the person, because there's some people, actually, Keith Johnson just put out a video, 48 hours. He made end tables, and he did it with normal tools. Like, he didn't use domino, and he didn't use that kind of stuff, any of that, just use a table saw and joiner and planer, basically. It's all about the person, right? Because some people could walk into a shop like mine that has, aside from my table saw being really nice, I've, mediocre stuff, and could build an outrageously nice thing. And some people would walk into my shop and be like, I don't know, where's my domino, or where's my, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's all in that sense. But, man, we could rant on all day about this kind of stuff. Shop talk. What you got going on in the shop? I know you got the desk build for your daughter. What else you got going on? And you just bought a scroll saw, and I want to hear about this.
Yeah. And so I'll explain why I got that scroll saw. So, and we talked about stepping stones here and saving, and I know that tool makes me money. So in North Carolina, I had a DeWalt scroll saw. I could pick it had a stand, and I could pick the whole scroll saw and stand up and carry it to wherever I wanted to use it, and it worked fine. It's a good scroll saw. And I'm not knocking that. But the one thing I always ran into is it not having enough size capacity. And so I use a scroll saw for more than just woodworking. So, in the sign industry, I'll take digital prints, mount them on foam, and cut those. I used to do tons of them for the military. And I can cut them fast on the scroll saw, but sometimes the capacity of that DeWalt. And so that's the only reason I spent the money on the 30-inch Pegasus, was for that reason, is because I could put it to use making money in my business. But I saved up for it, and I paid cash for it, and got it while it was on sale. It had a $125 thing. So, that I tell you, you never see me buy a brand new tool that ain't on sale. Ain't happening. No how, no way. And that drill press table that I just got from Rocklet, dude, it was on sale for $104 right now. That's why I got it. And, that's versus like, it's normally like $159 or something, but yeah. So, but in my shop, man, so it's not woodworking. I got 25 aluminum signs that I have to do for a doctor's office. They have removable magnets, and so digital prints mounted on that. Has nothing to do with woodworking, but they just approved that job today I've had the stuff sitting in here. I was trying to get it done before the end of the year and couldn't waiting on them. And then I looked at a wooden sign for a new coffee and ice cream shop about, 4, 5, 6 months ago when they first got the building and started this old historic building. They were reminded, they called yesterday and they're like, Tom, we're ready to get our sign done. I went over looking at it. I'm thinking, they're going to open up. Oh, no, they're opening in a few weeks. I'm like, you call me now, you want the sign in 2 weeks? I'm like, really? So it's more than 2 weeks. I think I got I got to have it done before we go to Workbench Con. They're opening before we go to that. So I've got to knock out those 25 signs. Then I've got to get started on the design of that. And I've got to finish I've got all the lumber out there working on my daughter's desk. She goes back to college next week. So I want to have that desk done then. And this is the funny thing, man. So with the midst of all of this, yesterday morning, I got my new scroll saw, and in the morning time, so I get up and I read and the word and I pray, and then I ask God, okay, God, I've gotten, this is a new habit. No, so I've not been doing this my whole life, but rather than saying, God, this is what I got to get done today, help me, I'm trying to get in a habit of saying, okay, God, what do you want me to do today? I've got all this stuff that I feel like I need to do, but what do you want me to do? And man, he's like, make your wife a sign. I'm like, huh? Dude, I was like, really? Make my wife a sign? He's like, yep. You got the blessing of that new scroll saw. First things for her. You need to make her a sign. And so I designed a sign. I bought this really cool font with tails and all off of Etsy. And so, yeah, so that's, I've got to do that before. And like this morning when I got up, same exact thing, that thought would not go away. It's like, okay, Lord. So, yep, I'm out there. As soon as we get off of the podcast, I'm going to go out there and keep working on that. So I'm going to finish that. And I know why God's laying that on her. I could just tell that my wife, like, I'm so busy all the time. And that's one thing I say to all you guys, make time for your wives and your kids. We get so busy in the shop and in work and everything in life. I am a workaholic. I will profess that I'm guilty of working too much and forgetting to take a moment and do something. I know we do it on Christmas. We do it on our anniversaries and on birthdays, but go do something. Just go in the shop, make something for your wife on a day that the world says doesn't mean anything. And just do something out of random. That's one thing I do. I never, ever, 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 and will never buy my wife flowers on Valentine's Day. I never have, and I never will, because the world says you're supposed to buy chocolate and flowers on Valentine's Day. So I do it other times, but on Valentine's Day, I don't go buy a dozen roses and pay $100 for them, because it would actually make my wife angry. She's like, don't spend that kind of money on flowers that die in 3 days. And so we do other things, but I try to break the rules, man. So
I could one up you on that one. My wife and I don't even celebrate Hallmark holidays. So
yeah. Oh man, I hate it. That's the biggest. The only Halloween and Valentine's Day are my two that I don't like. But
yeah,
so. But yeah, that's what I got going on, man. So I feel like I'm drowning. I got so much to do.
Sounds like a lot, man. I don't have anything really. Well, I say that.
You got a bunch of honey to make.
Oh, dude. I gotta get that rolling. I want to finish out the jars I have. I think I still got, I don't know, 15 or 20 jars empty. Like I need to make that up and then get some back stock. Yeah, so there's that. My father-in-law, a couple of years ago, I made him laser engraved him some coins, and they were just funny sayings he gives out to people at work. So he sent me an order for some new coins. So I have to make those for him. What else? Yeah, I got to make some finish. And yeah, and to your point, spending time with wife. I've been feeling the same. I've been really busy with work and then just so much other stuff going on. And so luckily it timed well, but my work is the main sponsor of the Philharmonic here in town. And so I got free tickets to go to the Philharmonic. And so this Saturday, my wife and I my mother-in-law is going to come over and watch the kids, and we're going to go have a nice dinner somewhere and then go to the Philharmonic and see some, I've never been to one, so a bunch of music. And so we're doing that this weekend. Yeah, honestly, I have shop projects I want to do, but priority right now isn't that. With Willie's Wood Honey coming around and Workbench Con coming up and that kind of stuff is really my priority. I will say though, I did order something for the shop I'm really excited about. I didn't need to order, but it was on sale and I couldn't resist. When I got my dust collector year before last, I didn't want to buy the Rockler blue collapsible hose, even though that's like the grand poopah of collapsible hoses. So I went on Amazon and I bought the PowerTech one for $40. It works. It just doesn't collapse. And so I've got a 25-foot hose just hanging around my shop all the time. And so Rockler they had a flash sale, and I got that the hose for like $20 off. And so I ordered that. I'm really excited about that. So that'll be coming in end of this week, I think. So yeah, got that coming in, and not too much right now out in the shop. It's cold. I will say though, it's been down around 0, and my shop hovers at 40 degrees. At night, it's got down to like 36, which still isn't freezing, so I'm okay with that. But even at 40, throw on, just some jeans and boots and a nice, a warm vest, and man, still can go out to the shop and work. And so when it starts getting down around that freezing and below freezing, that's when it gets a little, but I can do 40-degree weather all day. So yeah, not too much other than that. Just trying to make through every day. But man, it's getting late. I got to get up morning, drive 45 minutes to work, and it's been snowing and it's crappy out. So I'm going to jump off of here, but appreciate everybody that's listening. And until next week, I'm Will from Fly Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.